The hum of the office was the soundtrack to Maya's life. For 10 years, she had been the invisible, indispensable pulse of Crestview Designs. She wasn't one of the flamboyant architects who presented glossy renderings to clapping clients, nor was she a smooth-talking salesperson who sealed deals over expensive lunches. Maya was the project manager, the one who stayed long after the others had left, the silent force who untangled accounting errors, soothed furious contractors, and remembered every client's spouse's name and child's birthday. The founder, David, would clap her on the shoulder during the holiday party and call her his right hand, a title that felt hollow when his eyes would slide past her, never truly meeting her gaze, always searching for someone more important in the crowd. The annual company retreat was held at a sleek hotel overlooking the city. Maya had spent the previous week preparing David's keynote speech, stitching together the data she herself had compiled into a narrative of success. As he took the stage, beaming, she allowed herself a flicker of pride. He spoke of record profits, of expansion, of a bright future. Then came the announcement, and to help lead us into this new chapter, David boomed, "I am thrilled to promote Chloe Mercer to the position of Senior Vice President of Operations." The applause was thunderous. Maya felt the air leave her lungs. That was her position. It had been an unspoken promise, the logical culmination of a decade of loyalty and quiet competence. Chloe, who had been with the firm for 18 months, smiled radiantly from the front row, her designer dress shimmering under the lights. Later that evening, seeking a moment of quiet from the boisterous karaoke, Maya stepped onto the terrace. Through the slightly ajar door to the bar, she heard David's voice, low and reassuring. "Don't you worry about a thing," he was saying to Chloe. "You have the vision, the spark. Maya, she's a solid worker bee. She keeps the lights on, but she'll never be a leader." Worker bee. The word landed not as an insult, but as a definitive classification. She wasn't a partner. She was part of the furniture, the unseen foundation upon which the glittering facade was built. The drive home was a blur of hot, silent tears. The following Monday, she marched into David's office with a meticulously researched proposal for a new sustainability division. The market was shifting, clients were asking for green solutions, and Crestview was being left behind. She laid out the financial projections, the potential client list, the branding opportunities. David leaned back in his leather chair, skimming the first page before setting it down with a condescending smile. "Maya, this is cute. Really, but it's not our brand. We design statement buildings, not treehouses." He slid the document back across the vast, polished mahogany desk. "Stick to what you're good at, keeping the wheels turning. And honestly, be grateful for the stability you have. A woman with your quiet demeanor wouldn't last a week in the cutthroat world of executive leadership." 2 weeks later, an email from HR arrived in her inbox. The subject line was sterile, notice of position elimination. The body cited, corporate restructuring. There was no phone call, no meeting, no thank you. David, she learned later, had told the team she'd decided to pursue other opportunities. The betrayal was complete. She packed her 10 years of service into a single cardboard box under the pitying gaze of her former colleagues and drove away, her future a terrifying blank. The first month was a vortex of rage and despair. She applied for jobs, but the market was cold. The memory of David's dismissive smile and the phrase, "worker bee," echoed in her mind. A taunting mantra. But then, in the quiet of her apartment, surrounded by the ghost of her old life, she looked again at the sustainability proposal he had called cute. She had believed in it. She still did. It was solid, smart, and necessary. The anger began to curdle into a different, more potent emotion, fuel. Using her meager severance pay, she enrolled in an advanced sustainability certification course online. She reached out not to the architects at Crestview, but to the contractors, the material suppliers, the site foremen, the people she had managed for a decade, the ones who knew her word was her bond and that she fought fair. They, too, were frustrated with Crestview's outdated, wasteful practices. They became her unofficial advisory board. She started consulting, one small, green-focused project at a time, a homeowner wanting to retrofit their house, a small nonprofit needing an eco-friendly community center. She named her company Verde Core. For 2 years, she worked in radio silence. There were no triumphant social media posts, no gloating emails to her old network. Her life became a quiet rhythm of research, client meetings, site visits, and late nights mastering the intricacies of green technology. She poured every ounce of her Crestview-honed diligence into her own venture. Her reputation grew not through marketing, but through the relentless quality of her work. A satisfied client would tell a friend, who would tell a colleague. Verde Corps began to land bigger projects, a small corporate office, then a boutique hotel. Maya hired her first employee, then another. She was building something real, something sturdy, brick by careful brick. The commercial real estate world, slow to change, finally pivoted. A global push for environmental responsibility turned sustainability from a niche interest into a financial imperative. Major corporations now mandated green certifications for all their properties. Crestview Designs, with its focus on glass and steel monuments to excess, was suddenly, dangerously obsolete. Clients left in droves. The industry whispers said David was struggling, desperate for a lifeline. It was in this climate that Maya received the invitation to pitch for the contract of a lifetime, the new global headquarters for Ethereum, a Fortune 500 tech giant that had staked its entire brand on environmental stewardship. The project was a career maker. When she saw the list of competing firms, Crestview Designs was among them. The day of the pitch, Maya walked into the Ethereum conference room, a stunning, light-filled space with views of the city she had once served from a tiny cubicle. She wore a simple, well-tailored suit, dressed not for invisibility but for command. David was already there, seated across the table with two of his senior architects. He looked older, the confident bluster replaced by a strained anxiety. When he saw her, his eyes widened in disbelief, then flickered down to the proposal packet in front of her, emblazoned with the elegant Verde Corps logo. The client, a sharp-eyed, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Evans, CEO of Ethereum, began the meeting. David went first. His presentation was full of the old Crestview flash, grandiose animations, soaring atriums, but it was peppered with weak, tacked-on sections about energy efficiency that felt like an afterthought. Ms. Evans listened politely, her expression unreadable. Then it was Maya's turn. She spoke not in boasts, but in facts. She spoke of geothermal heating, of rainwater reclamation systems that would reduce water usage by 70%, of locally sourced, sustainable materials that told a story. She presented the data, the long-term cost savings, the positive environmental impact. She spoke with the quiet authority that comes from absolute mastery of a subject. She wasn't selling, she was simply stating what was possible. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Ms. Evans leaned forward, a genuine smile breaking across her face. She ignored David's glossy packet entirely. Ms. Chen, she said, her voice carrying a tone of finality, Verticor's proposal is not just a design, it's a manifesto. It's the most authentic and innovative vision we've seen. Your track record is impeccable. Ethereum would be proud to have you lead this project. The air left the room. David's face went ashen. He stared at Maya, finally, truly seeing her. The woman he had relegated to the status of worker bee was now the queen of the very hive his own survival depended on. The revenge was not in a shouted insult or a legal battle, it was in that silent, horrifying realization that crashed over him. As the meeting adjourned and the Ethereum team surrounded Maya with handshakes and congratulations, David lingered. He approached her as she was packing her things, his voice a strained, humbled whisper. Maya, I have to admit, I misjudged you. Severely. What you've built here, it's remarkable. Perhaps there's a way our firms could collaborate. Pool our resources. Maya turned and looked at him. She felt no anger anymore, only a vast, calm sense of closure. The need for his approval, which had driven her for a decade, had vanished. She had built her own validation. David, she said, her voice even, polite, and utterly final. Collaboration requires a foundation of aligned values. I'm afraid ours simply don't match. But I thank you for the motivation. Truly, I do. She turned and walked away, joining Ms. Evans, leaving him standing alone in the conference room. The ultimate revenge was complete. It was bloodless, quiet, and absolute. She hadn't destroyed him, she had simply built a better, brighter future, and he was now a relic of the past, left with nothing but the echoing silence of his own poor judgment.